All right, everyone. A few updates on the Israel-Palestine war, as well as generally, I wanted to analyze what Joe Biden is doing right now. He's beginning to wade into the conflict a little bit more than before. The U.S., of course, at first, we're 100% with Israel. No worries, we got your back, homeboy. And then, on the nightly news, every single night, you see blistering craters, and most of them are the result of IDF attacks. And what I warned of is happening already, and it's the reason why Biden is weighing in here. Biden's now calling for a humanitarian pause to the fighting. Basically, we can tend the wounded, the hospitals become functional, people have a place to give birth that has electricity and running water. It's kind of important. Gazans are now fleeing out into Egypt. The Rafah crossing is now open to injured civilians, although not everyone can probably make it. You get injured 30 kilometers into Gaza, it's going to be a long walk for a person with only one leg. It's going to be a little bit difficult. So things are changing on the battlefield at the moment. Biden is calling for a pause. Basically, everyone stop fighting for a while. Let's hope diplomacy takes hold, number one. And number two, there's, literally, at this point, probably tens of thousands of injured civilians that need care. Here's what I think Biden is doing. He realizes he's going to take his lumps for making this statement right now by seeming like he wants Israel to stop attacking Hamas targets, because the U.S. public by and large supports Israel. But as the war continues, because it's lopsided, because Israel has a large standing military force and all the toys that make the noise, and Hamas mainly fights with, guerrilla-style tactics. It's a smaller force. They have primitive rockets generally, although some of them have apparently been upgraded now, and their air force is literally paragliders. Because of the lopsided nature of the fighting and the fact that the IDF has the proverbial high ground, most of the media that you're going to see from here on out, as long as fighting continues, is going to be of dead Palestinians and things like that. I think what Biden is expecting, and I've warned of this being a likely eventuality, is that the public eventually sours on the continued fighting. A lot of people are showing their short-term memories right now, and there will be people who will downvote this video for me pointing this out and not even listen to reason, and because I have a longer memory, because I literally analyze sociopolitics in part for a living. Do you remember the days right after 9/11? Do you remember the days right after the operations in Iraq began with shock and awe? Most Americans supported retaliation. Most Americans supported kill them all and let God sort them out. People, lifelong liberals that generally wear a bleeding heart pin on their chest, all of a sudden were calling for blood. How long did it take? How many months before the public began to sour? Not that long. A few months in, things had already switched drastically in terms of Americans' belief in continuing the operations. Of course, by then it's too late. You're already too entrenched. Now, apples to oranges, you may say. That was the American public after an attack on the United States. Yeah, so I would think that people have even more long breath than when this happens, because this doesn't directly involve the United States at all. The same thing is conceivably already the case with Ukraine. Originally, it was gung-ho for Ukraine, we must stop the Ruskies. You've seen a shift in public conversation about this, to the point where the politicians even have begun to say, well, we've kind of done this for a while, and eventually you're going to have to stand on your own. By the way, Israel's under attack, so bye. It's the problem is really going to be optics more than anything else. Biden, by the way, running up against members of his own party, including some neoliberals, by calling for this pause. Hillary Clinton, only 2 days ago, said, well, a pause in fighting would just allow Hamas to rearm. Biden, you don't want to get on Hillary's bad side. You don't want to upstage the leader of your party, so to speak. She has had people Epsteined before, allegedly, on like a dozen different occasions or something like that. A lot of her friends commit suicide. It's insane. I mean, I would think that I would think that you had made all of your friends in, the depression ward at some point. Sometimes they manage to shoot themselves in the back of the head multiple times. It's incredible how these things happen. Anyway, he's running up against Clinton. He's running up against elements of the left wing of the party, like Tlaib and so forth. I mean, not that really matters. It just shows that schismatic tendency of the far left and their own stupidity with geopolitics and economic. I mean, the only reason that they support the Palestinians, honestly, it's not because most civilians are suffering. It's really because Hamas endorses socialism. That's what they want. They would love a one state of Palestine as long as it has a socialist government. By the way, they would immediately turn against them if Israel had a socialist government and Palestine all of a sudden said, you know what, free market economics sounds a little bit better to us. I bet anything that they'd do a 180 real quick. Biden is making a dangerous move here, but it's clearly strategic. What he's expecting is, okay, for right now, for the next few months or something, I'm really going to take a hammering from members of my own party, certainly from the other party, by the public, because largely they support the Israelis unless they're far leftoids and, you know, they're Antifa members or something. But that doesn't matter. It'll be fine. Eventually, the rest of the public will come around to this position that we need a ceasefire because they're going to continuously be bombarded with war images. What he's expecting, therefore, is a long-term gain on a short-term wager. So short-term, he loses. Long game, because the election is next year, not this year, he's expecting that it'll actually bolster his support because he can stand on stage and say to people, well, you remember that war that eventually the whole public was against? Well, all of you were calling for bloodlust. I was trying to call for peace, or something like that. He's setting himself up for a long-term gain. It's clearly political in nature. The man does not have a goddamn backbone whatsoever. He was advised by his people probably on this topic. Now is the time, Mr. President, to call for peace, which clearly isn't going to happen. The Israelis are ignoring ceasefire requests, etc. They're going to keep pounding the Gaza Strip. They're going to keep invading areas in the West Bank. They're going to keep fighting Hezbollah because they don't really have a choice because Hezbollah keeps attacking them. The situation has already become a de facto regional war with the Houthi jumping in, putting even more pressure on Israel to keep fighting. Biden is expecting that the American public will eventually get war exhaustion. And if things go wrong, he can always say, well, I warned them. Something like that. That's exactly what he would do. It's a dangerous move. It's a risky gamble. Because it could be that, you know, Hamas really dogpiles Israel again and all of a sudden the American public becomes even more Zionistic or something like that. He's making a political move. In terms of the war itself, it's basically just continuing on the same trajectory. Israel continues to hit things in Gaza. They've staged a land invasion. Iran continues to saber rattle. The Syrians, I think, are getting nervous. The Houthi have become involved. That pushes Saudi Arabia to maybe normalize with Israel faster, actually. And so the situation is basically the only big change is that the Rafah crossing is open to injured civilians right now. Everything else is the same. U.S. policy, meanwhile, has notably switched in a short period of time. That sort of reluctance to maintain the normal status quo line of U.S. doctrine for this region is very telling. And it can only have come because of a person making a political decision. It's not that Joe Biden saw the pictures of dead Palestinian kids and said, well, that's so sad, we've got to do something here. Israel's got to be a little bit more restrained because I don't want kids to die. You think he gives a fuck? He doesn't care if every kid in Palestine and Israel dies. He'd probably laugh his head off. We know that Kamala would. No, what he's doing is a political move. That's about all. Peace out.